Second, somebody wants to second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Frank.
So I guess, Simone, you wanna, which one is,
Where?
which one, Amy?
See,
South River Bridge project.
it's
It's
not,
on the backside, so it's under request for minor modifications,
Okay,
except the side.
come on up.
oh, dredge project.
One of you wanna explain what you,
Well, so Steve's here, they, you wanna explain what happened?
Yeah. The town, along with Marshfield, applied for a dredge permit for the South River. Everything was approved, put in motion. We went out to bid. The bids came up substantially higher than we had anticipated due to all the dredging projects in Boston Harbor and Plymouth Harbor. Very busy right now. So our plan is to go back out to bid, and we're planning on dredging in July. There's a small window that the state will allow us to dredge in July. This will open traffic back up in the South River so that we can, because right now you can't, it's very difficult to navigate. So even if the dredge is there, it's going to be getting better rather than worse. The issue, we were just going to put it back out to bid, but what we had done was a pre-dredge survey in the fall, and we had discovered that it got worse rather than better. And there's an additional about 4,000 cubic feet, 4,000 cubic yards of material that needs to be removed as well. So we're asking,
so you think moving it back a little bit is, and when there's more material, you think it'll still come in cheaper?
yeah, we do, because
everybody
they're not
else is-
going to, they're not dredging in Boston and they're not dredging in Plymouth.
Got it.
That
So
time.
at that time, they're not working.
Yeah.
So it's,
Funny
You
you
know.
say that, just, I was working on Glades Road and looking out, and I think I must have saw 4 different barges.
Barges going by.
In one way or the other, they were
Yeah.
going in both directions with cranes and
But no-
dredges on them.
it-
everybody's
it's
mobilizing.
not normal to be, because that window is very small.
Sure,
We can get our project done because it's a small project,
right.
but they're not going to mobilize all that equipment to, dredge in Plymouth Harbor
Right.
or in Boston Harbor. So we're hoping that by doing it in July, and if we don't get a bidder or if it comes in high, we're just going back out to bid in October to see if we can't get somebody early to take a bite at it.
Sure.
How
we-
big's the window in July? A week, 2?
No, it's a few weeks.
Yeah, no, I was
It's
just
not,
curious.
it's not big. I was surprised that there was even a window,
Yeah, I am too, I'm very
so
surprised.
it's small.
Yeah.
How long will it take to do the dredge?
We don't anticipate, we anticipate it being faster in the summer than in the wintertime, just because of weather. I think it's a couple of weeks. Is that what we came up with before?
I think so.
Yeah.
So will they still have to pull all the moorings in the South River?
They'll just be we'll be moving moorings around,
Okay.
As
As a guy with a boat right next to the channel, I'm wondering. 'Cause- No, usually it's in the winter and, the
Well,
boats are out and.
look at it this way. If we don't do it, your boat will
Oh,
be
no,
on the
I-
beach.
I hope you do it, because I hit the bottom all the time now at low
Yeah.
tide. Yeah.
So it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And most of Fourth Cliff is in that river now,
Do we have to make a motion?
Well, do we have
Right,
anybody
so-
else? Doug?
I have no question.
And Jen?
Dredge away.
Do we have anybody in the audience?
Well, it's not really a
Well,
public hearing,
But it's a notification. I guess my concern would be, we did have a public hearing. If anybody had any interest in this
Right.
project, they would have been here. I understand the predicament, and I can't imagine that anybody would be.
Yeah, this
to
is
your
like
point.
the state wasn't even, I don't know if they were sure of
Yeah, I
what
guess my
we'd need to
concern
do.
would be the people that are gonna be affected, either the mariners or whatever. I would assume everybody's on board because they just want it done. But I would think that it would be important to notify both Scituate, Marshfield.
Marshfield Conservation's already approved.
Right, so,
They had their meeting last week and took care
Okay.
of this, so.
so there was an official amendment to the 401 water quality certification, right? So there's the local commissions, and then it goes higher up the chain, state and federal level.
Right.
So this project triggered all of those environmental reviews and permit stages.
Yeah,
When they realized after the new survey showed that they needed to shift the dredge area slightly and the volumes needed to be
Slightly.
reconciled, they put together an amendment package. But it's really just two plans that are the plans that, of the total dredge area, there's two plans that there's kind of an amendment. And
Okay.
one of them, like Steve said, is due to sedimentation from the fourth clip, where it made kind of a berm that they need to dig out that area.
right.
So anyways, Marshfield, they did it more like a minor activities permit. For what Scituate does for minor changes like this is we just usually take a vote to accept the modified plan.
I don't have any problem with our commission, you know, it's an amendment to our
Yeah.
set of orders. My concern would be that the people that were,
Voters, no.
well, we must have sent out about a notification.
For this, no.
For
No,
the,
this
for
is-
nothing? We didn't, nobody,
No, it's on
No,
the
this was
agenda.
just
So
as a
that's
minor.
not,
why
not,
it's
not,
a-
not for this, but for the original, for
For
the.
the
ini-
order of conditions,
Yeah.
yes.
That
Right.
was approved.
So my point is, the people that were notified
Right.
through that, should they at least get a letter or something saying the time has changed? I guess if I had a marina there or some, and maybe this is all done, but if I knew that they were gonna start work in the busiest part of my season, I'd wanna know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the abutter notification process was for amending the 401 water quality cert.
Mm-hmm.
The engineer from Foth recommended to both Scituate and Marshfield Conservation Commissions to handle it administratively. But it's definitely up to you guys as to whether you want to reopen.
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
All I'm saying is, and it looks like people much higher up the ladder than us have looked at it in terms of environmental review or spawning or,
What we're gonna be doing
Yeah.
is, both Marshfield Harbor Master's Department and Scituate Harbor Master's Department are gonna be out there directing traffic. Just as if Route 3A, if they were repaving in the
Right.
middle of summer. It may be busy, but you're still gonna get through.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
gonna make the improvement, so it's not like they're shutting the river off and nobody can get by.
Okay.
Nobody's listening.
Yeah, but I just think it's good
Not listening.
to notify
Yeah.
the people that were initially notified, should be notified that there's a change to this. We send out all these notices and tell all these people if they want to come and have a say in this. And I don't remember that there was any real comment or anything when we did it. I don't recall.
Right, well, I can ask the engineer from Foth what kind of notification that they've done.
And
for this
Steve, I know
amendment.
Steve was, and the Marshfield Harbor Master are both working with the Marine. I mean, everybody works
Yeah,
together.
it's becoming impassable
Yeah,
as it stands.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't get done, it's gonna be very difficult. Even if we don't do anything,
if you
it's difficult
advertised
to
that
get
you were
by.
gonna rip up Route 3
Right.
in May, and then all of a sudden it didn't happen, or you started it 3 weeks early, and no one knew about it, that's my point. You have a public hearing, it's the process that everybody has the chance to have some input. So all I'm saying is we wanna make sure, I think from our end,
From
that,
the town of Scituate,
yes,
right.
that,
As far as making an administrative call on this plan change,
I don't.
you guys can do it
Yeah.
without reopening the public hearing.
I understand,
But if
and,
you want to, you could.
no, I don't think we need to.
What about even just putting a notice up at the post office or
Well.
something? That's, I think, what Frank is just trying to say.
Yeah.
Make
Well.
sure the people down there know it's
That this is-
changed.
this
Yeah,
has changed and-
changed
and
the
we're moving
timing,
forward, we're just
Not whether they want it to happen or not, but the timing's changed. That's all I believe
Yeah.
Frank is asking
I-
for.
Project applicant should
But
do
people
that.
will have questions,
Yeah.
because the minute they hear that, they're gonna think,
Well, but Frank,
It-
I agree
is
with
it,
you,
is,
Frank. They
is it
should
gonna be
aware.
blocked? You know, I think
Yeah.
if there was some basic, questions that we know people would ask, that would just be on there saying, And yes, you'll still be able to get through, and it will be after July 4th.
Whatever's the best.
What I had said was Monday through Friday, excluding weekends and excluding weekends and holidays for dredging,
Okay.
And then we're just gonna be down there directing traffic.
Now, is the material still going to the mass disposal site?
Nothing else is changing in the permit.
And the permit applicant is still the town of Scituate
Yes.
Harbor Master, or is it TA?
It's whatever's on the permits
The
pretty
town
much
of
staying the
Scituate?
same. I think it's just the quantities
Right.
is changing slightly, and they're they're doing a little less dredging over here and a little bit more dredging further down.
So less
Because the
at
dredge
mouth
material's
and more-
moved.
So I guess I'd just take a motion that we accept the change in time and the modification
And then we let the public know.
in the area, and that you notify public to that, sorry.
Either like newspaper or
Just something so
the
they
post
know.
Yeah,
office.
I think
Yeah, that's
letting
a good
the marinas are the big one,
Okay.
that know, and something posted in the newspaper.
We're changing,
Yeah.
the dates have changed.
How-
Waterways
Can
Commission.
you post something like on the Harbor Master's website? Because that's where
Yeah.
people would think to look.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I make a motion, we accept the revised plan for the dredge project North-South River.
Second.
All in favor? Good luck, I hope you get the numbers you want.
I hope so as well. Thank you. Have a good night.
Do we want to just go back to our regular lineup here? So the first one is 109 Jericho Road, and I reclused myself on that one before, Richard, so if you don't mind.
No problem. Greg, go ahead.
For the record, my name's Gregory Morse. I'm a registered engineer with Morse Engineering. This was a notice of intent and stormwater permit for a raise and rebuild at 109 Jericho Road. I presented this plan to you 2 hearings ago, and you had requested a peer review specifically with regards to the stormwater. At the last hearing, the commission was just in receipt that day of Merrill's review comments. Their letter, I believe, indicated that all comments had been satisfactorily addressed. We continued for 2 weeks so that you could review their correspondence if you had any additional detail. Again, 109 Jericho Road, it was a raise and rebuild. It's in the AE floodplain at elevation 15. We proposed the flood vents with the foundation. We proposed the habitable floor space at elevation 17, providing 2 feet of freeboard as required.
Penny?
As long as Merrill's happy, because it is a much bigger home going on the property. I'm okay.
Doug? I'm good. Paul?
No questions.
Lisa?
Nothing.
Jen?
Nope, I'm okay.
Amy?
Yeah, I was good with this one also. I just wanted to remind you of some discussion that you had about conditioning the number of flood vents. There was something about flood vents. Was there I don't know, maybe the engineer was gonna quantify how many
Sure.
flood vents were gonna be in the foundation.
Is there a distance they're supposed to be? Like
There's
every
there's
so
a
many
code,
feet?
isn't there, on area?
So there's a code, and we'd have to provide a calculation when the building permit's applied for it. There needs to be a flood vent on each side of the house. You need to provide a minimum of 1 square inch for every square foot of basement area. So we would provide those calculations. They have to be within 12 inches of the ground surface. We gave you the preliminary structural plans, which indicate the flood vents, but they didn't have the, I guess, the full sizing. So that would be included in the building permit package.
Will that cover it if he includes that in the,
We can probably add some kind of a special condition just to give us that set of drawings for building permit.
is there any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and on this one, I think that we are prepared to close and issue.
Issue, correct. That's what I recall. Is there anyone in the audience for 109 Jericho Road?
I make a motion to close.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
So you got another one this way?
Another motion to issue.
Well,
Probably should just add a close and issue, but why don't you just go ahead for a motion for issue?
okay, wait a minute. But I don't see him on the list here.
You're just gonna make a motion to issue, Penny, but you're right, it's not on your list.
All right. I make a motion to issue orders
For 109 Jericho Road.
for 109 Jericho Road.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
190 Glades Road, new dwelling.
Good evening. Brother Sullivan with Kevin Consulting. Here representing the applicant, Jeff Burek, for 190 Glades Road. What I have here on this plan is actually the plan that was approved in order of conditions granted in 2011 for the previous owner of the lot. I bring this to you because it's associated with there's a note on the plan to clean out the existing existing isolated wetland and also the area around it. It was full of debris. It's an isolated wetland adjacent to a coastal beach. If anybody knows what this is through the gates at the end of Glades Road. Mr. Burek owned 170, which is the next door neighbor, and he recently, in 2013, purchased the lot adjacent to it. The original house was blocking his views, and so, long story short, he ended up purchasing the lot and moving the house. So, as I said, the reason why I'm bringing this plan into play is just to give you kind of a little bit of a background, because I know a lot of people here are not familiar with the background of this lot. So this was approved in orders and conditions issued in 2011. And it was also associated with this planting plan, mitigation plan, to do the clean out the edge of the wetlands and enhance some of the buffering plantings around there. So the plan we have for you today, we have redelineated the wetlands because the wetland line was too old to keep in the other plan, but it's like no good. So we actually, and there was the clean out of the isolated wetland was done. Some of the invasive species were cleared out as part of the old order, but in essence, the old order had expired. The old order was, there was a lawsuit between the abutters. It was a long, nasty, drawn-out thing that, so, and for some people remember this.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So, so in the essence, some of that was done. From what I understand, an enforcement order was granted because the old order was expired, was never recorded. My client purchased the lot, so here we are today in 2019 proposing a house in a different location. We still have the same, I proposed planting 3,000 square feet, I think. So we are going to incorporate the original buffer planting plan into this project. Now, the only thing I think we're going to do here is that since there's no, I think the buffer planting was larger on this side because that's where most of the work was being done. We're not doing any work in this area now. All the work is being done over here. So I'd like to move, and most of this, I don't know if you can tell, but a lot of it is over existing ledge, which really doesn't make any sense. So we're going to do most of our buffer planting on the other side, which is where right now the wetland line, the edge of the wetland line comes near the toe of the slope of the ledge. So we're going to use, and I had 3,000 square feet, but we have to mitigate the 6,000 I'm showing on the other plan, around this side and up into these areas here. So as I said, so this is a notice of intent in a stormwater project. We have had peer review from Merrill Engineers, responded to them a couple of times. we proposing a rain garden in this area here to attenuate the runoff to the wetlands. I originally wasn't, was increasing the flow to the isolated wetland area. But after discussions with Amy and with the peer review agent, it's not, I mean, there's no such thing as a isolated coastal wetland, so it's either isolated or not. But in fact, it does, when it does fill up with water, and most of it is now, when I was out there a month ago, it was solid ice, there's about 1.5 feet of water in it. But in reality, this does fill up and overflow into the beach. So when this isolated area does fill up, it goes towards the beach, doesn't go into adjacent properties. We're proposing a house, most of it over the existing ledge. We're proposing taking a large number of ledge out. The existing impervious on the site is approximately 15,000 square feet. The proposed impervious is about 10,000 square feet, so actually reducing the amount of impervious on there. And we're sending less water to Glades Road. There's a low point down in this area which typically puddles and overflows across the street. So hopefully this project will alleviate some of that. We are decreasing the flows in rate and volume to Glades Road pretty substantially in the range of 20 to 40% some of the rainstorm events. And with the addition of the rain garden, we are decreasing the flows to the isolated wetland. I did respond to, latest response to Merrill Associates was as late as Friday. And I had a phone call with her this morning, so I do have to, there's a discrepancy in the plan where I have the bottom of the rain garden at 24, and I showed it 23 in the plan, and also it's modeled at 23, so I gotta bring that up and get my separation of groundwater, so that's the only minor tweak I have to make. And I can do that by just increasing the rain garden by 10%, and that will decrease the flows to the isolated wetland. So I think that's about it.
What's the, oh, go ahead, Penny.
No, I was just, I kind of just have a comment. I like the positioning of the house. The last house was
Right.
in the 50-foot buffer. You know?
It
and
wasn't
this-
in it, but it was right next to it.
Well, it was right, it
Yeah.
might as well have been in it.
Right.
It was sitting on top of it. The whole thing was in the 100,
Right,
to be
yes.
honest. So this, of course, I think is great, and I'm so glad that we're gonna get the replication on the wetlands, and I don't know, it looks pretty good to me.
Doug?
Good. Yeah, I know, it looks good. And looked to me about reading through the comments from Merrill that everything's been addressed at this point, so I'm good.
I would presume we get a new updated planning plan.
Frank wants it. Frank wants it.
In other words, you're not using the old one, you said you're changing it, I'm presuming we will get an up-to-date one.
Yes, I can change it
Yeah.
to reflect
Yeah,
it.
no, otherwise I'm fine, but I think we should have a current planning plan, because it's changed, 50% changed.
Sure.
That's all.
So there'll be a change to the planting plan and a change to the rain garden.
Yes.
That's it.
Paul?
No questions.
Lisa?
Nope, Rich took care of my questions.
Jen?
There's no structure there now, right?
No, it's vacant.
So how are you decreasing the impervious if there's nothing?
Because there's a large amount of ledge on the property. I don't know if you've been out there, but it's a large amount of ledge. And so in the areas where we are proposing lawn over ledge, we're required to put 18 inches of material over that ledge.
Wouldn't we rather there be, I feel like that's not a better thing. I'd rather the ledge be there.
It's impervious then, it's like a concrete parking lot.
Right, but it's.
All around the house.
Whereas,
so
whereas the
everything
lawn will
sheds
soak
off.
up the water.
Right,
With
soil will
18 inches.
contain water and
Yeah. It's better.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
better.
Well,
All right.
I mean,
I don't know that I.
so to Jen's point, it's a change.
Yeah.
Right now, naturally, there's an area.
Right.
There's a ledge area, but their requirement, if they want to build, is to not increase an impervious area. So it's essentially a function of trying to,
Right, and I mean, we don't want to just leave, the exposed, coming off the deck and leave an exposed ledge area for, a lawn area per se.
right? Jen, this was a site that, before you served on here, that flip back to the,
I'm very familiar with it.
okay, so there was a house that was long protracted filing.
Yeah.
Very long.
And the house that was proposed was much closer to the coastal bank,
Yeah.
the whole piece, so, just trying to think of what other alternatives they would have, like, let's say that they left that.
I don't know. I mean, I just find it hard to believe that blasting out rock is better than leaving it. I understand impervious is going down, but it's not a concrete driveway. It's
But it will act
nature.
like one.
Right. How much,
So basically, why don't they just leave it alone? Is that
Well,
what you
I
think?
don't know if you can leave it alone, but calling it an advantage that you're going down, I don't think is necessarily correct.
do you know how much material or blastings has to be done to,
That feels like something to know. There was a lot done across the street.
Yeah.
It's also really wet right there right now, so is it, the wetland is only far in, nothing closer to the road?
The isolated wetland, yes, is just out here. Now, there probably are some puddles. I know there's a puddle on Glades Road itself. I mean, that was there, like I said, a month or two ago when I was out there. It was frozen over.
I was there today, and there's about maybe like 9 inches of water right in the property area.
Okay.
So I'm just, that's not a wetland, or it
No.
hasn't been checked?
No, this time of
It's
year,
on ledge.
that's typical. I mean,
Sitting on ledge.
I was out today, the septic system site, where the water table was above my weeping that was there 2 months ago. You know, so right now, the water table is actually above water table. So, this is historically, after stone melt, after the, after you get thawing, and after you get a rain event, the water table is the highest it is right now. So that's typically you'll end up with puddles, and there was, there's been extensive, look at this site for as far as an ANRAD and everything else for the site, so
There's been a lot.
yeah.
Everybody's traipsed through there.
is the location for the leaching field, did that remain the same as
It
the?
did, yeah, remain the same. There's reserve area over here, but the leaching area stayed the same.
Was up front.
That's what I saw.
No, it's a much better plan,
Amy?
environmentally looking at.
Well, so, clearly, Brendan went through that there's a history on this property where you probably have more of the history of the property than I do, since it predates me. So anyways, there was enforcement for the IBW and disturbance in there. They did accept a plan back in 11 for mitigation of that area. The stormwater review is just about wrapped up. I mean, I think it, all in all, it appears to meet the requirements of the regulations. So, things that are outstanding include the septic system. I don't think there's Board of Health approval at this point. They're waiting on decommissioning the private well next door, and.
That did get signed off as soon as last week. I was in there today, so. the
Yeah, I talked to
decommissioning-
Joan today, and
Yeah.
she said it was still going through review. But anyway, so that's making progress. So,
Continue.
I would say that we're waiting for updated plans, and if we are not to close it tonight, but we're making good progress. And I don't think you were expecting to close tonight.
No, no. Unless the board wanted to.
No, but you could get us the planting plan before the next meeting,
Yes,
and we can probably close then if all the other stuff is in.
right.
And, you're gonna fix the rain
We're gonna
garden.
fix the rain garden, yeah.
So you've got a couple of small
Right.
things anyways to do.
Yeah.
And then I think we're good to go after that.
What about the blasting?
Do you want to see a quantity?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be good to know roughly,
Which ledge is coming out? Okay.
yeah.
Is it going to be blasted, or are you just going to
I
hide?
don't know,
hide?
I'm assuming it's gonna be blasted. We're far enough away from homes where it wouldn't bother anybody. There's enough of it, you'd be chipping out there for, I don't know what the ledge is like out there. I know they did quite a bit on across the street. And it's
Here
really
on
hard to
this-
chip, then
is
it's,
it-
you
are
know,
you
you'd be out there
blasting?
for months on end chipping, where blasting would be, a much shorter time frame.
Has everybody had a chance to go out there? Do we want to plan a visit?
I have not been out since 2011 to that area. I was there for the original.
Yeah, so maybe we should put together
Sure.
something. a
Sure.
field trip
Field
before,
Oh, boy.
with members, and anything you think that would be good. Okay.
So, yeah, well, to give
So we need to,
Brennan like clear direction on what we're looking for, the quantity of the ledge, the change in the rain garden,
Yep. Revised planting plan.
revised planning plan. I mean, Jen's question about altering this ledge area, I don't think that are they removing ledge in order to get that 18 inches of material,
Oh, yeah,
or?
some of it has to come down because it's, right now the area in the rear yard, there's a high point, it's 28, 29, where the first floor is at 29, so we gotta come down a couple few feet anyway.
And the purpose of blasting the ledges for what?
You
So
have
to
to put the
bring
house
lawn
there.
and bring the front area down,
In order to have,
inside the rear area.
so there's impervious area where there's already ledge. And then they're building a house, driveway, all that sort of stuff that has more impervious area. So they're trying to create some pervious area, and in order to be in compliance, that pervious area, they've got to put 18 inches of loam on top of the ledge. In other words, it's not sufficient enough just to put 3 inches of loam on top of that ledge.
Okay.
So you have to remove a certain amount of it. I guess I don't know that we have that much jurisdiction on how much ledge that they can remove from that, but the alternative, I mean, they're in the 100, so
Oh, this is in the 100?
So the alternative, I guess, would be that they'd have to create some additional area on the property to have more impervious, so somewhere.
So wouldn't that be a better thing than blasting the ledge,
Well,
finding
but I
another
think that it
place to
doesn't really
more
matter where
impervious?
you're gonna have to do it somewhere. In other words, there's another spot on here, they still have to remove a section of ledge, or cover it, I guess. You could just cover another area.
I mean, we let people blast ledge all the time to build houses.
Yeah, and taking rock and, it's, in a way, it's like replicating a wetland. You're taking stone, which nothing lives on but moss, and you're replacing it with soil and,
That can soak
it's
up.
like doing replication. Yeah, you turn a stone area into,
It's not gonna make the rest of that ledge compromise it?
no,
No.
now,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, so here's another alternative. I mean, you could take a look at this. They've proposed a paved driveway. If you said, we want an impervious driveway, in this, we don't want to disturb that. We want an impervious driveway.
But I think they want
That'd
to
be
disturb
easier.
and have a.
Well,
The neighbors across the street don't have a paved driveway.
I mean, that's an alternative. I don't know whether that's sufficient to get where they're going, but if you're looking for alternatives, but just keep in mind that your requests need to be compliant with
Yeah.
our regulations.
You can't step over.
And so as far as the ledge removal, do you want the ledge removal in the 100-foot buffer or the entire site? When you talk about ledge removal, you talk about stormwater or notice of intent?
So there's a disturbance in the 100-foot area. If we're trying to eliminate or avoid as much disturbance in the 100-foot area, then I would think that that would affect the stormwater to some degree. And you could avoid some of the disturbance in the 100-foot area by, say, decreasing the impervious area of the driveway, would be the logic I'd apply to that. Am I,
So you're saying you'd rather have a pervious driveway, a stone driveway than?
then be removing more, I'm trying to,
Yeah, I
trying to
agree.
look at what Jen's asking about and look at what the alternatives are, and does it make sense to do it?
Well, making the driveway impervious doesn't give you any good flows towards the isolated wetlands. It's a catchment area.
Okay,
So, and if we're gonna leave this ledge, then my rain garden's gonna get bigger, which is gonna remove some of the area of lawn in the back and side yard. I mean, you know the history of the site. Like Penny said, we moved the dwelling from where it was, you know, 50, the building was 52 feet
Yeah.
away from the wetlands. Now we're over 70 feet away from the wetlands. We're not, other than the mitigation plantings, we're not doing anything in the 50-foot buffer.
I think Penny's point is a good one, that the original proposal
So much better.
Right.
was a lot more invasive, and this is
Right.
less. To Jen's point, if they were trying to make any other changes, I'm just trying to see what would be the possibility. And to your point, you know, you wind up having to change the rain garden as well.
Well,
I mean, this is
Yeah,
all
I-
a discussion.
I'm only bringing up a point that it
Yeah,
feels
Brendan,
artificial.
I know there's 2 catchment areas, and a lot of the water on the backside of that house is headed towards the isolated wetland, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So the water runoff is going to happen one way or the other. So right now, the water runoff would go over pervious areas, basically ledge. So by removing the ledge and replacing it with topsoil and grass, doesn't that improve the water quality from the runoff that is going to go over that part of the area?
Yes, it does.
And
It
the- and the-
improves it, slows it down, and it'll infiltrate.
Right, it cleans the water better over grass than it does rock.
Right.
So I think, the way I see it is it's actually an improvement
Mm-hmm.
into the wetlands, because grass picks up any particles or whatever, like, that's running off the roof and the deck and everything else that they're doing, so it cleans it better than the rock will. So I like the idea of having the grass, because it's gonna soak up the water, it's gonna clean it better before it gets to wetland. Because I don't see any way to, even if you increase the size of the rain garden, to get all the water into it.
Right, only a portion of the lawn right now is gonna go into the rain garden. It's
Right,
like a
so-
high point through here, high point in the septic system, so all this is gonna flow into the rain garden and then into here. The rest of this just sheets flows off the lawn and ledge into the isolated wetland. If we were to leave this ledge, now this is gonna be higher than the grade over here, so now I'd have to do a swale to make sure that the water gets out and around the corner and not going into the street.
Yeah.
But,
I actually like
Ledge going.
I like the idea of putting
Grass.
topsoil and grass there. I think it's, as opposed to,
A foot and a half is,
that's gonna absorb a lot of water.
that's nice. You know, 18 inches,
right.
for it to go down and get clean, and not just run straight.
In an area that's not regulated as a no disturb
Right,
area.
yeah. No,
do you see the pro and con to that?
Yeah, I do.
So, the other piece that the driveway is technically in the 100 on the other side of the, right?
Yes, a portion of that is, a portion of the turnout is, yep. But we're providing, I have a stone trench along the, adjacent to the driveway
yeah,
to provide treatment for that.
Okay.
grab it.
So from my understanding, we need to update the stormwater plan to make sure the numbers work for the rain garden. Revised planting plan, and a quantity of ledge removed.
Yeah.
Were we clear on
Nice.
that
And
quantity? Is
site
it gonna be within the 100-foot buffer or the
And
entire
They
site?
want to arrange a site inspection.
Oh, yes, okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question, Doug?
The quantity that is gonna calculate, is that just within the 100-foot or the entire site? Or both?
I can give you both.
Both.
There you go. That answers that.
Okay.
And your site visit, do you want anything, I don't think, I might have the septic system staked out, I don't think I have the house staked out.
It's not that big a site. I mean, is it fairly open now, or is it pretty scrubby?
Right now it is, yeah, with no vegetation, you can see from the street all the way to the ocean, pretty much.
Yeah,
I think if you can, show the commission roughly, I mean, a couple of stakes would be good, but if you're comfortable basically explaining where the house is on there, I don't think there's a need
Okay.
to
So we need to
really.
be there.
Or something marked out a little bit,
Yeah.
so if we get a couple of corners or something, then I guess we'd know.
Okay.
So when are we gonna continue this to? April
Next
1st?
meeting, it should be all set.
April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day.
And then that'll take care of the well issue should be done, so you'll be clear with Board of Health. Okay.
So I make,
When you say physical, I'm sorry, would it be this weekend or next weekend? So that we get it.
We'll be in touch about a date.
Okay.
All right.
I make a motion to continue 190 Glades Road to April 1st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You, sir.
663 Hadley Road, Hadley Country Club.
I didn't know what the address was. Just know the green place.
Hi, Bill Arnberger, I'm here on behalf of the club. Alex Patterson from ESS is away, and I talked about, since the last meeting, the things the commission and the agent were looking for. They produced revised report, sent it to Art Allen, and I believe Art Allen confirmed back that we addressed the concerns of his concerns.
Yeah.
And the last time, I think with that information, we're looking to close it and vote it. They should do that.
I'm all set. Do you want me to make a motion, or you wanna see if
Well,
everyone else
we
is happy?
go through.
Yeah,
Doug?
I'm good.
I was good.
Paul?
I'm good.
I'm all set.
Jen? Amy, anything else on that?
No, I mean, I thought maybe you might want to chime in on special condition for the continued regulation of the pond.
Did we get that, Bill?
Yeah, I put that, you got that, Amy?
Yeah, I did see what he came up with. I wasn't sure that was the wording we wanted to use or not, so you might want
Want me
to
to
take a
read the
look at
language?
it.
I should challenge Mr. Arnberger on it.
Go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
Or, and no private watershed.
I mean,
Although the new irrigation pond to be constructed will not be jurisdictional upon completion, that in the event the landowner desires to discontinue the new irrigation pond in part or in full, they will retain a pond area of a minimum size of 35,840 square feet, which is the square footage of the existing irrigation pond.
And that gets recorded with the...
That'll be conditioned right in the order, as a continuing condition.
There's an and or a but or something in there that probably ought to get switched.
yeah, well, I know, and so
We put some more these or
Art
thous in
Allen's-
there, just to,
wording was maybe a little bit different, because I think the way that's worded, it assumes that it's definitely not regulated in the future, but I didn't know if maybe we wanted to craft the language
Well,
so that it's not admitting definitely that it's not gonna be a regulated feature, although it's been implied that it,
Yeah, then all you have
that's
to,
what's gonna happen.
all you have to do is start with the word "that" in the event the landowner desires to discontinue the irrigation pond. Just get rid of the first phrase. That was just explanatory, that's all.
Fine with that. I mean, I think if we come up with, I don't...
Something pretty close to it,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
See, if I can do it in 4 words, I'll do it in 10.
Saying that too.
I could take a shot at that, but
Yeah,
we're at a
you're-
public meeting,
You're right,
so...
get rid of that first half, you don't even need it.
All right.
All right, so you can make a motion to close.
Now, is there anybody else in the audience for Hadley Country Club?
I make a motion to close. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Are we all,
Are we gonna do the orders too? Issue?
You could, they're not ready, but I
I
mean, you could
underst-
vote
Yeah,
to
we
issue and we'll
discussed that.
try
But
to
I
get it
thought
out.
we were at least gonna vote, so he knows if it's denied or...
Oh, yeah, sure.
I make a motion that, to issue orders on this project.
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, just so. I
We
believe
know that
that's
we're
what
gonna
Mr.
issue
Arnberger
it.
wanted.
97 Edward Foster Road, Anrad, that's a request for continuation.
Oh,
Till
they're gonna continue with me?
till when, Amy, did they say?
4-1.
4-1.
Okay, I make a motion to continue 97 Edward Foster Road to April 1st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. 43 Oceanside.
Hi, Paul, how are you? Say fine, thank you, Penny. You're right here.
I'm Paul Marabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicant for the proposed work at 43 Oceanside Drive. At the last meeting, you asked us to revise the plan. I'm showing the proposed water and sewer services, that's on the lower part of the plan, shown in blue. We also revised notes 7 and 8 to say that we removed the notes saying that there's plan to relocate the existing dwelling to 33 Oceanside. And note number 8 now reads that all disturbed areas will be loamed and seeded to match existing site grades. And note 8 was added that upon completion of the installation of the clean fill and the loom and seed, an as-built topographic field survey will be performed to demonstrate that the site has not been built above the existing site conditions. Those are the revisions you asked for the plan, and we made them and submitted them before you.
Penny?
No? Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Doug?
Good.
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 All set.
Jen?
Yeah.
Amy, you want to add anything to this?
No, I mean, I think we have everything we need to close. We did have some ideas on special conditions, but,
Okay. Anybody in the audience for 43 Oceanside? All right, I'll take a
I
motion.
make a motion to close.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
278 Central Ave, elevate house and expand deck.
It's got to be open and then continued, right?
Okay. On March 18th, 2019, at 6:25 PM, the Town Hall Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws, excuse me, regarding the application of Richard Campbell to elevate existing house and expand deck on dwelling located at 278 Central Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
And there's a request to continue, isn't there?
I make a motion to continue to.
oh, yes.
58 Central Lab to 6:20 on April 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
222 Central Ave. On March 18th, 2019, at 6:30 PM, the Town Hall Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 300 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Mark,
Thank you.
what's your client's? Aho, to replace a deck on dwelling located at 222 Central Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
For the record, Karen McGovern from Extended and Taylor, representing Mr. Alpo. Since the picture, typically worth a lot more than a lot of plans. What Mr. Alpo is proposing to do is to replace the existing deck on the riverside of his house. It's going back in the exact same location, same elevation. Dick Rockwood drew a 12-page plan set showing the difference between the existing and proposed showing that essentially it's the exact same deck. The only additional footprint on the deck will be a small ramp that will wrap around the left side or northerly side and extend back to the top of the riprap where he has a connect to a concrete patio on the ocean side. Very similar to a deck that the commission approved 2 years ago, right next door at 224 for Benjamin Tuck. That deck was actually much larger and expanded. This one's going to be the exact same size, same location. It's just a weather-worn deck that needs a repair.
I'm sorry, I'm out of order, but am I seeing that there's a stairwell coming down?
Yep.
That's different than what is there now, correct?
There is a stairwell in the middle up against the house.
You might not see it.
I can't see it, but that's why I wanted to ask the question. I wondered if I wasn't seeing it, or, and I'm not
Yeah,
concerned about it, I just want to make sure I have it
Against the
right.
house, which is going to remain in that location.
Okay.
The boat's in there.
Yep.
I have one quick question. You said on the north side, there's gonna be a ramp. Is that gonna be a wooden ramp or what?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
it's gonna
okay,
be,
going
it's gonna
up.
be bolted to the, it's gonna be attached to the house and attached to the chimney. It's gonna wrap around the north side so that they can get from the patio area to the deck without having to cut through the house. So if there's people on the patio are coming up on the beach and they wanna go around to the deck side, they don't have to cut through the house. They don't have to go down to the outside. Go around the outside.
Okay, so it isn't a ramp from the driveway?
No.
Well, it's a walkway.
It's from the patio.
Like if you look
From
from
the
the
ocean side.
house to the right of it, similar to
Yeah.
what they have.
Yeah, no, that's,
Call it an elevated walkway. There's a slight change in elevation.
okay,
Call it a
that's
ramp.
where I was
call it a
getting confused. Thank you very much, Terry.
Good.
Lisa?
Fine.
Jen?
All set?
Amy, any thoughts?
No, everything appears to be in order. It's a requirement.
Anybody in the audience? Terry, do you know, this ramp, we don't have a survey, so I'm assuming that this is on property, otherwise you wouldn't have.
Yeah, there is, we did do a certified location plan that's part of the packet. Because all the offsets are the same. It should be, it was in the packet we submitted. I can give you this copy.
Yeah, if I could just take a look at it. Does anybody have one? I'm just got the two architecturals in the picture.
Yeah, no, it's
I
not.
thought that was a new way that you go.
PDF file, I think.
Plus the packet.
Okay.
It wasn't, I usually get one. All right.
It was in the email version.
Here's where the problem is.
Sorry, guys.
No, I need to start bringing my computer.
That's
good.
It's the only way. I
All
can
the
do it.
proposed work is in red on that plan.
Got it.
Do you want to see it?
The offsets to the deck
Yeah, I
are
saw it.
identical.
Got it over here. Thank you.
I'm looking at it the old-fashioned way.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're too
I'll look at it this
organized.
way.
That's the difference.
That's why we're both here.
Put it in color so you can see it.
Old and
I
new.
appreciate that.
Do you remember to set the date on your VCR?
Wow.
That's hard.
I just got rid of my VCR.
Ouch.
The one you can talk to, but I still don't know how to run it.
Okay. See any issues here?
Motion to close?
We have a second?
Yeah, I'm, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good one.
That threw you off, didn't it?
It did. Ah.
That's how regimented we are around here.
Oh,
What the heck's the world coming to?
I don't know.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
2 Dickens Row, boulders on the lot line. Applicant is, Lane Walsh.
Afraid of it.
On March 18th.
See,
You're right. 2019 at 6:35 PM in the Town Hall, Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Law and Section 30700 Town of Situate Code of Bylaw regarding the after-the-fact application of Lane Walsh to place 3 6-ton boulders along lot line on property located at 2 Dickens Row, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Gregory Morse. I'm a registered engineer with Morse Engineering, representing the Walsh Family Trust, Wayne Walsh, trustee. This is an after-the-fact notice of intent filing. Mr. Walsh, at his property at 2 Dickens Row, had placed 3 to 6 ton boulders along one of his lot lines. This property is located in the AE 14 floodplain. You can see, referring to the plan here, we've provided an aerial photograph. This is the subject property at the corner of Town Way and Dickens Row. Across the street on Dickens Row, this is oceanfront. You see the stone here associated with the revetment along the beach. But along this lot line right here, the eastern lot line you see in the pictures, Mr. Walsh placed stones along that lot line. He didn't dig into the soil, he didn't disrupt the soil in any way. They're dry laid, as you can see. It's not a wall per se, but water can flow between the stones themselves. What prompted this was, over the years during storm cleanups, etc., the town would come in, or private contractors would come in and clean out the road. Mr. Walsh had hired us to do a survey of his property. When we surveyed his property, we staked out where this lot line was and found that a portion of the road encroaches onto his front yard. The town also installed a street sign in the middle of his front yard. In an attempt to gain back what is rightfully his, he placed the boulders along the lot line. You'll see there are stone walls demarcating some of the other lot lines in the neighborhood. There's certainly stones around the property. He sits at the lowest point. For reference, the high point of his property is at elevation 12. As you go in a northerly direction, the intersection here is approximately elevation 9. We're here for an after-the-fact filing.
It's usually the other way around. Most of the time, people are encroaching on the town's property.
I personally don't have a problem with it. It isn't stopping the water. It's just kind of breaking up the flow. I don't have a problem.
This is a full notice of intent.
Yeah.
It seems like an RDA at the most would. Yeah, if the only thing that we would be concerned about is if there's a restriction or aversion to the water flow, and if it's all heading down Dickens Row anyways.
He's at the
He's
low
already at
point
the
of the
low
road.
point. He's not going to
And
do it.
across the street's marsh.
And it's not really a
Yeah,
wall.
and it's not diverting anything to anybody else.
No.
Oh, yeah.
It's on pavement, Greg? The
A
boulders.
portion of the boulders are on the pavement,
Pavement, so
correct.
it's not increasing impervious area.
Okay.
So,
Looks good.
Lisa?
How many boulders did he put down?
Great.
No, 3 to 6 tons.
It was 3 to 6 tons.
I'm counting this.
I estimate they were about 10 boulders placed along the
Some of
side.
these are really small.
So it's not 3 6-ton boulders?
No, they were,
It's three.
size was 3 to
three-
6 tons each.
Okay.
But there's only 3 like really big ones.
Yeah, right.
These.
Thank you.
Or is it for the boulders, or is he like
That's-
hoping to add to it?
That's it.
Or
As it's built today, as it's shown in the photos, that's it. Yep.
Now, if you go down there, I
did.
I don't
Amy?
see a
Right,
problem.
so just a little backstory on this one. It was brought to my attention that the boulders appeared without proper permitting process. So I contacted the owner, who got right back to me pretty much, although there was a delay in getting the filing in. This actually, I think, went down,
Fall.
yeah, it was late
Late
fall, early winter is when the calls came in. And so anyways, so we're glad that it is in as an after-the-fact filing. I guess that the interest of the app that we would be concerned about would be storm damage prevention and flood control. But I don't think that they are joined like a wall, the way
Right.
they're placed. I agree with your assessment, so I'm not sure that other people are going to agree, although there were no comments by the state. So that was good.
Anybody in the audience to speak to this?
Well, we live out there in Dickens
Just, we
Row
gotta
also.
take one at a time, and then just your name and address.
Okay, my name is Kirk Harmon. I live at 10 Dickens Road. And we have a concern about, vehicles turning around that point. I mean, the rocks are kind of adjacent right there on the road. Maybe it is on his property, I'm sure it is, they surveyed it. That road is, my understanding, far back as I can remember, and now we're looking at like larger vehicles, maybe emergency vehicles, 18-wheelers pull up, and people have to move in and out. It's very difficult to make that turn. Nothing was brought up to us. I mean, it's a private road, and nobody brought it up to us. Mr. Walk never brought up to us that, he was doing any of this. I mean, I totally understand he wants to protect his property, and I agree with that. Everybody has to protect his property, but being a private road, it should have been discussed with us first. And maybe we could have came to some kind of compromise, but it just came out of nowhere. Just dropped the rocks and off he went to Texas.
Well, unfortunately, most people should file or at least notify abutters. There's a couple of different filings here, so this is a full notice of intent, and the process would have or should have been for the owner to file first before they do the work. In this case, it's an after-the-fact filing, so now everybody has their opportunity to express their concern. And then the commission will look at this and see if it has an adverse effect on either the flow or, Amy, just did the town ever weigh in on this? Did we ever get any input back from the town of Scituate?
I did reach out to DPW to see, because at first I was like, I also assumed wrongly, actually, that they were on town property, just
Right.
because the road is paved, but the town.
So the town's not maintaining any part of Dickens Row?
No,
Okay.
no. And so they looked at it from a public safety point of view and passed on doing anything about it, so.
Okay. All right.
Sure,
You want to respond to that?
Sure, I'd just add that Dickens Road is a private road. It's an 18-foot wide right-of-way. None of these boulders are placed within that right-of-way, so there still remains an 18-foot wide right-of-way that abutters would have access to.
Okay. Do you know, I've been down there after storms and whatnot, and the overwash that gets onto that starts to really close in Dickens Row. If there's overwash on that road, do you think there's still, and I get it, they're working on their property, although I guess if Dickens Row's already over there, I guess I'd have some question whether there's some adverse possession going on here, but that'd be up to the people at Dickens Row to think about. But that would be a concern that in allowing this to go on here, at some point this could get closed off. Just a thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of ongoing maintenance that happens down there with the storms.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Julie Sachs. I live at 4 Dickens Road. And I don't think that the Walshes realized what they did and what the effect that it would have, especially last year with the storms that we had. The storms that we had could have moved some of those boulders and potentially blocked off Dickens Row altogether. And I believe had those boulders been there last year, there would have been a lot bigger mess and a lot more storm damage that would have needed to have been cleared up. And I don't see the pictures very well there, but they're pretty big boulders. And although they may not stop the flow of water, they're gonna stop the cobble and it's gonna back up, especially if we have another storm like what we had last year. And I believe Leslie O'Connell, she couldn't be here, she sent a letter and she's basically has a lot of issues with these boulders because it greatly affects her property because it will stop the cobble and it will stop the debris and it will just pile up even more on her property. Like I said, I don't think the Walshes realized, I mean, they don't really get a lot of damage on their property, but those rocks will definitely create more of a barrier with the storms. And it will make the town cleanup a lot more difficult to navigate around those boulders. Right now, they bring a front loader in there to clean out there, and those boulders are definitely going to hinder that and make it a lot more difficult to clear away.
Okay.
And also, you know, in an emergency situation, if those boulders are continually stopping the debris from going down there, it's going to prevent any of our vehicles, including emergency vehicles, from getting up to the end where Kurt lives.
Okay. Either way.
I think.
And your name?
I'm sorry, I'm Meredith Ryan at 6 Dickens Road.
Okay.
I think even in its current condition with no cobble, it would be very difficult for a fire engine to make that turn onto our road. And, I mean, I echo everything that Julie said and Kirk said. I don't think it's true that the town doesn't do any maintenance on the road, because the seawall in front of my house, 6 Dickens Road, that huge seawall, has had a breach in it for years, and the town is willing to come and do some cleanup as a result of that breach, because we get far more debris and cobble than we should as a result of the breach. So they have been coming in and cleaning up. They would not be able to get their trucks down the road. Kirk and I often have to hire someone to just get us out after storms. They would not be able to get their front loaders up the road without difficulty. So access is a huge issue.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, Eric Sachs, 4 Dickens Road, neighbor. The road was put in by the town many years ago and maintained by the town to this day. Why they did it the way they did it, I don't know. Even on old plans, you can see the lot line and the road overlapping the corner. That's on the plot plan from 10 years ago that I have. You know, it's just the way it's done. I don't know why it was done that way. I'm not an engineer. There may have been a reason. I don't know.
Probably because the ocean's been moving this
Yeah,
way.
I don't really know. But if Mr. Walsh has a problem with that, he should talk to the town, talk to DPW, not put rocks in the road and block all of our access to our properties and block debris. When the water comes down that road, it's tremendous. It's, 2 feet of road. It's ocean in the front. It's ocean coming down that road. It's tremendous. It's totally inaccessible. And that will clearly block a lot more debris than is there already. I don't understand what he did and why he did it.
Theoretically, if we were to do that, we own the road across, we own the wave going across to the ocean. If we were to do that, exactly what Walsh did, that would be huge. That would destroy the house.
I mean, the engineer said to gain back what says, talk about that. Happy to talk about that, but don't put rocks in there and block. It's in the road. It's in the road where we have to pass, and engines and machines. It doesn't make sense to me that you do that. I'm fine with the rocks. Put them on your lawn, but not put them in the road. And if you got a problem with that, talk to the town. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think a lot of times people react to stuff when they've seen damage happen to their houses, and that's why we have these hearings. We often have people that want to put up either some diversion or whatever, so that the water doesn't come onto their property, but in the process of doing that, if they push that water onto neighbors or have some other adverse effect, then we do have some jurisdiction over that. I don't feel comfortable that we want to close this. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to this?
I can just read off some of Leslie's concerns.
Yeah. Well, I think, Amy, why don't we just say that we're not going to close this tonight. I'm just wondering.
What are there in?
I believe Leslie has some really good ballot. And there's not many. There's I think there's 3 line items, 3 or 4 line items.
Well, what I'd like to prefer to do, if we have other things to do tonight, and we're not going to close this hearing. I'm just wondering if we need to have somebody really take a look at if we're working on a coastal piece, we typically wind up with a coastal geologist or someone talking about flow and all this sort of stuff to see what would happen. So we could address it in that direction. The other thing is maybe Mr. Morse wants to go back to his client and talk about this and see whether or not there could be some alternative before we actually move to close this, maybe either working with someone, but let's take a look at this, and obviously the safety concern, diversion of water, things like that, and see if there can't be something worked out that will come back to the commission that then we could look at before we get into anything further. And we can take those comments and give them to the commission members as well as who's ever gonna review that.
Yeah, pretty sure you've already.
I think we got it.
I could
Got
read
that.
it into record if you wanted me to, but I agree with your approach, Frank. Let's
All right.
move on. Yep.
So this, we're not conditioning these things to stay there. At the end of the day, if we don't agree that they should be there, we could have an enforcement order to remove them. But for the time being, I think we want to get some more information, and maybe folks can kind of sort this out a little bit.
They look terrible, too.
Well, we're not into aesthetics, but, you know, I get why people want to protect it. On the other hand, they don't have the right to create a problem like that. So let's see what could happen.
I'm just sorry, what additional information are we asking them to give us?
No, but
Have we all
I
been
mean,
down
I
there
think we need to give them, if we're asking them to go back and give more information.
Well, we
give
could
them
ask
some
that we want some information on whether these stones truly divert or move water.
Well, they're talking about,
And the
Not
safety
water,
piece, I
but
think
the-
I'd like the town to weigh in just a little bit. We don't have anything from fire or DPW with regard to that.
Kevin went out there and he didn't indicate a problem with them, so. You can ask Kevin again, to put something in
Kevin
writing.
is.
Kevin, DPW.
DPW director, Kevin?
Yeah.
Cafferty?
Yeah.
You want the fire
I
chief?
would commend Greg to go back to his client and make sure, maybe you've already done it, that all of these comments, that the client is aware of these, and at least offer up the opportunity to have further discussions with the neighbors, or something, an alternative to this.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can broach the subject with them. We could stake out where the 18-foot wide right-of-way is and see if there are other encroachments that prohibit the road from actually being where the road is supposed to be. I certainly can go back to my client and check with that. I can provide a little bit of additional information on the stones and the spacing in between them. It's not a velocity zone, it's a still water, it's an AE elevation at this location. The stones are similar in size to the stones in the revetment across the street. But I can certainly go back to my client, offer to potentially stake the actual road location, and come back to you with that, sure.
Yes, sir.
I think to redo the road, rebuild, I mean, there's a huge amount of work to be done. If you want to reclaim his property, get it back to lawn, get the road where it belongs, you know, that can be done, you know, but that's a ton of money and a ton of work and effort. If all he did was put the rocks on where his lawn is now, you know, the town did what the town did, I don't know why, but they were back where they were. It won't make any difference in what's going to do to protect his property, and it will make everybody feel much more safer and comfortable in this neighborhood, and be a much less risk. Just put the rocks on your lawn and leave the road alone, and everyone will be happy. If you talked about it beforehand, it came here before with meetings and proper permits, it would have been discussed, it probably would have been done right. But since he ignored the rules and aggressively put these rocks in the road to reclaim his property, quote, you know, he's creating all these problems, and he shouldn't have done this way, it's wrong.
Okay. There's
We have some.
a couple more, yep.
Quick, Don on 7 Allen Place. Could somebody who's concerned that these boulders might move, is enough wave energy there?
Can I just make a point?
Could you quantify, could the engineers quantify whether the boulders will stay there? They ought to be able to do that.
A quick point, if I may.
Yeah, let's just follow an order. Okay? So,
Sounds like another site visit.
we got that? Okay.
Did we get, Jen, did we get his name, your name, I'm sorry?
Donald Ernst, 7 Allen Place.
Okay.
Those boulders will move. If we have another storm like we had last year,
That should be
there's no
quantified.
doubt those boulders will move. Don't you
The
agree?
seawall in front of my house
So let's,
is probably 6
Quantify it.
inches closer to my house than it was after.
one thing for Jen to keep track of who's here, people, we're gonna follow an order
Sorry.
and a name and an address, so that we can have all these in our record, all right?
So it's,
And I realize some of this is emotional, but, and again, what I'm saying is, when we review this, is possibly we need someone with the experience that works on coastal issues to be able to properly address that. I mean, you may think they can do that. We've all seen storms. I'm very familiar with this area as well, and the overwash, but I'm not a coastal geologist. So there's an area there that gets storm activity of different types, overwash, flooding. It's not technically in a velocity zone, but we do know that a lot of water moves through there. So we can sort that out. All right?
I just think it's Meredith Ryan, 6 Dickens Row. I think the issue is, I think there's a second issue here, which is the breach in the wall, which creates as much cobble as we get on that road. So I think, I mean, we could show you a number of pictures from the storms back in March where we had a foot of cobble that we had to get out of there. And that is only going to create an additional foot on top of that. So, and that is in part because of the breach in the seawall, which is a separate issue, which needs to be addressed, certainly, but I realize we're not here to discuss it tonight. But I think there is an issue, a contributing factor that we're also frustrated about because the town hasn't done anything about that either. So I think this just adds insult to injury.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Eric Sachs, 4 Dickens Row. By putting the rocks in the road, it blocks access to the road. You know this. So if Mr. Walsh wants to put it in that spot, he needs to move the road. I mean, and that can be very expensive. I mean, you can't put the rocks in the road and not move the road over. You know, it's just, so one or the other. Either put them on your lawn or put them in the road and move the road.
Okay.
But you can't just put them in the road and think it's okay. It's not okay.
All right.
And it doesn't solve the cobble.
All right, we don't, we're, I think we've got enough.
One more here.
I'm sorry. Did you want
Oh, Stacy Walsh, 57 Jocelyn Ave. I'm so sorry to hear this, such a hard thing. I pulled up on the satellite where this is. I appreciate he put something there and you guys are upset. Is there any way you could get a mediator and work to get a collective that would help all of your homes? Because it sounds like he might have done that one to get his land, but he's also worried about the cobble. Is there a way you could do it together?
Well, I think that's part of what we discussed here, but we're gonna need some more information, so.
If you allow him to do it, I'm gonna do it.
We are a lot, did you hear what I had said earlier, that this is an after the fact? If we decide that they should not be there, then the next piece for us would be to issue an enforcement order. The commission wants to look at this and see how it affects this, and whose jurisdiction, if it's jurisdictional, how do we deal with it? Okay? So that's the reason we go through this process, and we'll go forward from there. But I don't think there's much more we can add to this evening. We understand your concerns, and we'll let the engineer look at that, and if we think that we need to get additional information, we'll request that. All right?
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
So I'm just wondering how much time we want to do this.
Can we go out 2 weeks?
You think you're okay?
Next one. Fine. I make a motion that we continue 2 Dickens Road to April 1st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll be rediscussing it April 1st. All right?
Thank you.
40 Central Ave, Elevate. On March 18th, 2019, 6:40 PM, the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Patrick Carey to elevate an existing dwelling on pile foundation located at 40 Central Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. Kevin Reed, Consulting, representing the applicant for the notice of intent. Pat's with me here, and his builder Brian is also with us. The application is for the raising and rebuilding of, well, actually elevating an existing structure in the flood zone. The property's in a AE 13 flood zone. The existing foundation is elevation 8.5 approximately, so it's in the flood zone. They would like to elevate the existing structure and construct a new foundation that meets the flood code. The foundation is going to be,
I thought it said piles.
nope, it's a concrete.
I see that. Okay.
If it was written in the narrative, something that was misprint, but.
There are piers in the center of the foundation, concrete foundation perimeter.
Just for the record?
What was that?
No, you can just state your name so that,
Brian Mandel, the builder.
so it does say under a pile foundation
Yeah.
in our notice.
Okay. I don't know where, I get called from the bullpen for this, so I don't necessarily know all the details in it, in the package. I did go through it. I did not see piles. So either way, we're in AE flood zone, looking to do a concrete foundation with flood vents. It's been designed, the flood venting has been designed by Rivermore Engineering. They're looking to raise the foundation to elevation 1356 with a first floor of 14.7. So that would elevate us half a foot above flood zone at the top of the foundation. The flood vents would be put in no further than a foot from the finished grade so that flood water can pass freely below and through the structure. So they will jack up a house, remove the old cinder block foundation, put in the forms, pour it, and then they will lower the house down onto the new foundation. They will fill the basement. The basement will be filled with sand to existing grade so that you don't create a puddle under the building. So when we get a run-in of water, it will move freely under the foundation, and then when the flood subsides, it will flow off. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Penny? You want a minute to think about it?
No, it's just that I thought it was going up on islands where you want a full foundation, but you're gonna have the vents. And it is a decent distance from the ocean, so I guess I don't have a problem with it.
I didn't know we could do foundations, Amy, on Hummerock at all.
Oh, there's a lot of them, a lot of
Yeah.
vented
Sure.
New ones?
foundations.
As long as you
yeah.
have flood
Yep.
vents. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're in a steam, if you're in a
In the
velocity
AE zone.
you need piles. If you're
Yeah.
outside of the velocity
It's
zone.
out. See where his house is?
Yeah.
It's here,
It's-
and here.
It's 100 yards from the
So
river.
he's a,
Okay.
yeah.
No, I just, no,
The water just slowly goes up and down there, so there's no scouring, you know, it's just the tide
so
slowly
it's not
comes
a,
up.
it's not a
Yeah.
question of letting the water flow in and out?
No.
Because I thought on a bigger beach, we
No.
always
No,
had
you've
to do
got
that.
to-
No,
Quite
you
a
gotta
way-
do
it's
that
quite a ways
because
from the
Four
ocean,
houses between
and it's
them and
much
they-
closer to the southern part of
Okay.
Hummerock.
you need the piers where you have scouring. Like if you did this in the V zone, the waves would come and slam into the concrete foundation.
Or an A zone that's just on the other side of a V zone, you're
Yeah.
still gonna.
Right, right, but where,
The-
you know, where they are, the
Momentum.
tide just slowly comes up and down.
I've learned to defer to the three Humrock experts.
Yeah, no, I'm just
For
learning.
that
learning the
location,
ropes.
for that location, actually, and this is really a non-engineering opinion, that's actually a much better way. If he's up on piles and there ever was water, it's going to have much more effect on the condos that are next door and on the houses across the street on the ocean side. So,
So he's acting like a hockey goalie.
Yeah.
I know, I
It's
just
funny,
thought.
we had this discussion the other night at a coastal advisory.
It all depends upon
Richard?
where you're
I'm good.
situated.
Good.
Location, location.
Situated.
Yeah.
Very clever pun.
Yeah.
Amy?
Just a couple of comments. One, I didn't see the copy of the deed for the property, for ownership
No, I didn't either.
and filing, so we need that before we can do anything. Also, as far as the septic system, I didn't see it located on the plan.
It's gonna be
And I was
the,
just wondering if you're going for a septic upgrade, if your number of bedrooms is staying the same or increasing, or anything like that.
so there's no increase in flow, they're gonna retain the existing system. We're not changing the location of the house, so the setbacks to the leaching field and the septic system are gonna be the exact same as they are now. And I can get you the deed. I can email that to you, or
Okay, you will need that. I think it would be good to have the septic on the plan.
yes, I can add the septic to the plan.
Otherwise, coastal dune, barrier beach, you
Okay.
guys know the drill.
Can we ask anybody else in the audience, Chris?
I am interested to know, though, are you gonna have to temporarily move the house?
No.
Just go straight up?
Straight up.
Okay, because I was gonna say, there's no room to move it.
No.
Okay.
All right. You want to take a motion to close with just adding those pieces?
I'm all right with it. I make a motion to close.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great guy.
You'll get that stuff to,
I will, I'll send them right in.
Thank you.
Okay, or we won't give you yours.
Right.
We'll keep
Deal
them.
breaker.
Yeah, no problem, I'll be on it. I'll take a picture and send the deed right now, but I'll just do it in the morning.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny.
That's my favorite.
Yeah,
And there's somebody shot.
yeah.
You're like,
We'll get it together.
yeah.
System and stuff.
RDA's for 128 Central Ave, gravel parking for a boat. On March 18th, 2019, there's 6:15 meeting in the Town Hall of Scituate. Conservation Commission will act on the request of, who's William Doby? Senior.
Keith Dillon.
That's you.
For determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaws to place gravel on an area of 15 by 40 on property located at 128 Central Ave, Scituate. Abutters are invited to attend. Good evening. Just tell us what you want to do, Mr. Doby.
Well, basically, there's an alleyway that comes up by the trees and alongside of our house that we don't use very often. We use it to get a truck in there to pump our septic system because it's on that side of the house. And traditionally, a smaller boat, a little lobster boat, we pull up in there. The boatyard in Marshfield where I store the boat inside is closing. It's gonna become a car dealership or something. And I've gotta get my boat out of there, can't keep it there. And I'd like to put my boat in this area near the pine trees, my property. In the last storm, when the town cleared the road, they put kind of a berm in front of that. I can get up over that with the small boat, and I didn't bother doing anything about it at the time. Now the people who haul the boat say they won't put the boat there unless I can harden that area a little bit. I just want to use bank road gravel and harden the area a little bit so I can park my boat there.
Okay. Penny?
No, I don't believe I have a problem with it, I think. It's all right.
Doug?
Sounds good.
it's pervious, so.
Yeah.
Richard?
Fine.
There is no beach grass there.
No.
It's not-
No, no.
No problem.
Jen?
I'm good.
Since it went so quickly, could I make a couple of comments on what went on?
The only thing, I think, just, wanna be-
Sure, why not?
the material that you use, Keith, should probably be a little bit more natural, whether it's crushed gravel or something like
Well, It's
that.
gonna be bank run, right, naturally, material run out of a gravel pit.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sure, what other
Well,
What word of wisdom?
Well, I wanted to agree with Penny and bring up something about that site that had the ledge.
Yeah.
I've spent my whole career on these kinds of wastewater and water quality issues, did my master's thesis on shellfish areas. One of the big contaminations is animal feces or avian feces with surface runoff. And if you look at the research that George Hoyfelder has done at the Massachusetts Alternative Test Center down at the Cape, you will find that 1 foot of soil on top of that ledge, never mind 18 inches, will essentially remove all the coliforms, and it will run on the top of the ledge still, but it'll be free of coliforms. So
Oh, wow.
it's...
Oh, yeah, a little
That's good to
expert
know.
input.
Well, especially since
Did I
there's a
say
million
something about
seagulls
improving
there.
the water
You
quality?
did.
Did I say
You-
that?
you did.
You didn't say.
Very good.
Not as
Give an
eloquently. I didn't have the
No
chloroform
prophet
word.
is respected in his own town.
Now we're gonna say something, now we're gonna say something you won't like quite so much.
Okay.
I'm a butter to the South River dredging.
Oh,
I kept my mouth shut, but at the original hearing, though there were quite a few of us, myself anyway, and others, wanted the dredge material to stay within the Humrock littoral system.
Right.
It wasn't a totally free system. It couldn't be done because there wasn't enough time. It was a life or death emergency that it had to be done then. It couldn't wait to consider that option. And now, because it costs a little more, it's not a life or death option. It can be done in the summer.
I think that the only thing, and we're done with that one for
I'm
tonight.
done with it too. I don't
But no,
wanna
no,
take the window.
but just the other piece to that, I believe, is that we got some feedback from the material that they were dredging out, and there were some issues of compatibility and, I don't want to say pollutants, but that material is sitting in an area where there's lots of boat bottoms and all kinds of stuff, and I think there was a question whether that material, Keith, I'm not disagreeing that we don't want to put more material on the beach. The traffic, there's
It's
a,
in the mouth of the river, all washed gravel and stone. You saw what was pumped out of there before, up onto the.
I think the better part would be to try to get the Air Force to do something with their cliff before the whole damn cliff is in the mouth of the.
Well, I hear that they do have some money, but every year I hear they have the money.
All they've come to us with is they want to post some signs to keep people out of there. And the other one, while we're venting,
here we go.
is the dredging of the Piscataquis, I'll never say it right, river in New Hampshire. And all that material is supposed to come down for beach nourishment, and because it's too much money, it's all gonna get dumped out at sea, when we all need that along the coast. So it's crazy.
Disagree with you there. I just
Can't
believe that if it was such a life or death emergency, a few extra bucks shouldn't have mattered.
Well, I don't know if it's a few extra bucks,
I think it was more than a few extra bucks. I think it was big bucks.
But if it wasn't the town, if it was a private person, then we'd do it.
thank you.
Fine.
We do need a motion to close
Yeah,
on him.
Yes, I make a motion. No,
On -3,
give it
sorry.
-3.
Second.
We'll have that ready for you.
We have a second?
Yep, we have a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Why don't you take the material from the driveway and place that on the, when you take out the driveway, take that material
I'm not
and,
gonna dig out anything on the drive.
you're just gonna put the gravel right on top of it? All right.
Have you seen what we have in front of us?
Yeah. No, you've done
We maintain a pretty.
your model.
We try to do the best thing we can.
Thank goodness for Rosemary.
Tell Rosemary we said hello.
These are very smart.
Amending number 3, Driftway.
Right, so Frank, this is not the public hearing, but I think that they're here to just walk you through what they're gonna be asking for
Got it.
at the public hearing, which will be the next meeting.
Yep.
Why are they doing it twice? Why are they doing it
Because
twice?
that's the way, that's the
Well.
procedure.
Okay. The procedure.
Good evening.
Hi.
Dan Humphreys from LEC, Paul Marabito from Ross Engineering, Bob Shepard, who's the builder. Back in November, we had a long discussion about how could the project proceed with allowing the demolition of the pre-existing single-family dwelling, rebuilding that, at the same time holding on the coastal bank protection alternatives.
Oh, okay.
And at that meeting, we discussed somewhat of a fairly unique approach to closing the hearing for the house, but allowing an amendment to later be filed for the coastal bank work. So that is a significant part of what's being proposed. There is an alteration in some of the drainage and a proposed new well. If we were coming here just for the coastal bank, I would argue that you essentially had approved the filing of a notice of, an amendment at that time, and wouldn't require a new notice of intent. And then we could actually hear it tonight. But if Paul wants to explain more about the well and the drainage, then we can understand why it may need to go over to April 1st. And we'll let the commission decide on how major or minor the change in the drainage might be.
You
Does
just
that-
gave me a headache.
I'm sorry for this.
You know what, it might cut to the quick at the next meeting, and right now it's not even 8 o'clock, so go ahead,
Yeah.
Paul.
Okay, let me start with the changes that we made since the last public hearing orders. This is the proposed double row of the coconut fiber roll that was suggested by CZM. They also asked that we put a small berm here so the water would not shed from the site onto the coastal bank. The other thing we added was a well. The reason we put the well in there, it was indicated to me that as part of the plantings that had to go in here, they had to be watered on a fairly regular basis. So we applied to the Board of Health for an irrigation well, which is in this location here, which also happened to be in the area of the shallow lawn basin for the stormwater runoff. And the well can't be within 25 feet of a drainage system. So what we did was, instead of having the shallow basin, we used leaching nets.
To make it small.
And so we went to a leaching pit in this area here, just behind the existing garage. And what we have is the lawn will shed the water down in the and we submitted the drain calcs with that, the revised drain calcs. And, the numbers still work, because the soil types out there, and the plowing the water hasn't changed. This is where we show the well, which is, we show it 58 feet from the leaching pit. So that's the only change in the stormwater. Instead of having the basin here, we put a dry well in this area here. And the other changes were on the original site plan. This is a separate stormwater permit plan. That was part of the original.
If you don't, you're gonna miss a planting season, that's the problem.
And these are the changes that are on the site plan, which was predicated by the site visit from CZM. Also, the proposed plantings here are going to consist of a variety of self-tolerant grasses and shrubs. And where we had a row again, here again, we're going to be replaced by the coconut fiber roll, which stands we're putting coconut in there instead of rocks, basically.
Thanks, Paul.
So if I may, what your decision here is, it's procedural as to whether or not you want to accept this as a request to amend, or whether this should be a new notice of intent.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it appears to me that this could probably be an amendment to the notice.
Right.
I'm unsure about the well at this point, but we can discuss it in the public hearing. I mean, specifically, there's a condition in the order which prohibits irrigation wells. Guidance that I've received from coastal geologists are that they would discourage irrigation wells on the cliff for stability reasons. But again, we can engage in that during the public hearing process, where abutters will be notified and so on, and you can discuss it with everybody all the neighbors knowing.
I think having it as an amendment to the order, as long as has been advertised, is fine. And I get the conflict, because in order to plant this out, they're directed to irrigate, and then the town puts on a water ban, so they can't. So maybe we just have to talk about a time to establish that bank and then stop using the well or something like that.
Once the
That
vegetation
has
begins to
been
grow.
done.
Or maybe rain barrels or something
Well,
like
a
that.
lot of,
Well, I don't know that you can generate enough water.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
need a lot to
no, the rain bill.
start that.
So,
Oh, time of year, that's a good one. Yeah, because we know that the water ban goes into effect in the late summer, so if they could get the plants in early in the growing season.
all right, well, let's, I think, but your thought tonight was, do we want to do this
Procedurally.
as an amendment? And I think you're fine,
Yeah,
personally.
yeah.
Yep.
So wait, we're not,
We're not actually.
We're not
That's all,
taking actions?
nothing.
In order to really, in order for
It
them
hasn't been
to,
advertised yet, so we
Okay.
need to put it in the paper and.
but, so now you have the opportunity to think about what they're going to say at the next meeting, and you can sharpen your game.
well, can I ask, can I ask, which helps me a lot. I can use Google to look things up.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Google this.
Can I, no, I do have a question. So, when I used to submit these, go in front of boards, especially the commission, and present a plan or something like that, my fear was always that there was gonna be some member of the board who just got back from a workshop, had their head filled of all these new creative, like, super, and they're just gonna lay this out and
MECC.
destroy my, I'm that guy.
The new
No,
guy on
because,
the
and the
block.
reason why I brought that up is because of the coconut fiber rolls. It's the first time I heard about it was at the Mass Conference, like that. And they have versions of that that are wrapped in soil and stuff like they call it the taco style. And they put it, so my question is, have you used those before and how do they work?
We have used them in a number of different conditions. The worst of which would be in a velocity zone where wave action
Oh, yeah, just
greater than
wipes them.
3 feet. But because of advance in technology from Wilkinson Environmental in particular, they're really held together with stainless steel cables anchored back into the bank,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. Something like this that's above the velocity zone, the main purpose is to really control drainage coming off the bank and support of material above it.
And,
They can be planted, so you don't really see them there.
right, because they're the ones they were talking about, they were planted inside, and that's
Right.
what the purpose of the watering is, because it takes a lot of water to get those things to seed. But isn't that existing slope rock? Or is that all soil?
It's all soil.
Okay, so it makes sense.
And they're
all
gonna be,
glacial
it's
till.
gonna be stripped, and there's gonna be more material applied,
So get
built on it.
vegetation to
Right.
grow and stabilize this thing.
If you go out there, Doug, you'll see how they stabilized the bank just to the north of that, and that's what we were looking at, and
I'm hoping you'll reduce
Right.
it.
allow them, basically be able to do the same stabilization. But when we met with CZM, the bank to the north, they had used gabion baskets in some of this terracing, and they'd prefer not to see that. So then they're moving to you don't have to water gabion baskets.
No, I understand. And I understand the need for the well. If it doesn't hurt, it doesn't destabilize the bank in any way, I'd rather they use irrigation well than potable water
Right.
to water that.
Just be careful where you go with that one.
Yeah.
One of the other questions was whether there's changes to the stormwater, so it looks like they need to be brought back to Merrill to just look at the changes.
Is there any way that could get to Merrill in the state that it's in, so that we'd have?
I've already sent it, so they,
Okay.
they gave us the complete submittal.
Yeah.
In the future, I mean, really, a letter would suffice for them to be able to determine whether or not it's a full amendment. You know what I mean? A lot of times people just summarize the project, get the answer, and then submit for the hearing, but we have the whole thing already, and I sent it off to Merrill, and I'm hoping that their scope will come in within the budget that we still have remaining. And
Will they be able to get feedback to us by the next meeting, do you think?
I think it would be tight, since our window is next Monday for new material, but hopefully, I mean, if it's all fine and dandy, I think we should put them on for the first.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
We really don't have to vote on anything, do we?
No, this is.
No, we just made the
this is
recommendation.
Your Tylenol has
I
been
know.
delivered.
Thank you. I was getting
Good.
all confused.
Doesn't take
Weren't
much.
your brothers?
Doesn't.
Weren't your brothers horses, weren't you?
Are we all set?
Good.
Yeah.
All right, good, thank you, thanks for,
No motion? Okay.
yeah. Jen, were we supposed to do something for 182 Central Ave to April 22nd?
And I just have that in there so I don't lose it for now.
Okay.
I can't do those anymore. They're crazy. Take care, Paul.
How about,
Okay.
sit in the room
I
here?
got a lot of orders.
Well, we're gonna do 81 Border Street,
Hey,
right? Can we do that one?
You wanna go through the CFCs,
Well,
jump around since.
right now, we got two yeah, that's what I was hoping to do.
Yeah. Okay, so 81 Border, again, many of you have the history of this project, not Jen, maybe every not Doug, but maybe many others of you. So it was two lots that were, a house was moved on one lot, brand new house was built on this other lot, which is now 81 Border Street. And project was permitted in 2011, 2012 timeframe. It was built, and so now there's a property sale, and they've come to us for a certificate of compliance. So upon review of the as-built and going out there, the house is built, it's up, property's stable. I mean, I'd say all in all, it looks good, and I would recommend that at least we issue a partial certificate, if not a full certificate of compliance. There were a couple of anomalies that I noted specifically. There was a drain with a infiltrator that the engineer was unable to confirm the presence of the infiltrator. So that we know that there's a catch basin for the drainage, because there was also a stormwater permit involved in the development of these two lots. It was a kind of a funky order. It was under Jim O'Connell's, it was 2 agents ago.
Yeah.
Don't really have the back history, and that's where I'm going to you on this, but Frank and I met out there actually this afternoon with Gregory Morse and Stacy Walsh, the daughter of the owners. And I mean, I know there's a property sale, so something's gonna issue tonight. It's just whether it's a partial, so that you can resolve the stormwater, or whether you're comfortable with the stability. The property's right on the edge of the salt marsh, on the northerly side of Border Street, look across from the River Restaurant. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar about where it is, it's on Border. Slopes down on a couple different sides. I don't know what to
It's
say.
interesting because this was, I looked it up, this was on the agenda of the very first meeting I was here.
Yeah.
I know nothing.
No, nothing.
So you were just out there again,
Yeah.
so what's your opinion?
Yeah.
You've seen
So
it the
so
most
it's good, Amy,
recently.
Greg, Stacy, and I took a look at this, and for members that have been around for a while, Stacy's dad, Dick Walsh, actually developed several properties along Border Street over the years, and this was the last project that he did, and it was a house that was on this site, and they picked up the house, literally moved it over, split the lot, and then built this house over the last several years. And to Amy's point, there's a couple of things that are missing. There's a drain for the driveway that was supposed to go into some infiltrators. Well, we can see the drain, we can see the pipe leaving the drain, but Greg wasn't there, and so he couldn't attest to the fact that there's actually an infiltrator there. So we spent some time looking around. We actually called a couple of the people that had worked there as contractors trying to determine
Did they actually install it?
what went in. And it's so long ago, it's sort of like the best of my recollection, we laid a pipe, whatever. And so I think whether or not the infiltrator actually got installed or whether it's a drain pipe with crushed stone or something to that effect, we really don't know.
Does it work?
It appears to me to be working. If it wasn't working, the water would be flowing over the edge and eroding the edge. So in walking around, most of the pieces are in place. There was an area that was supposed to be graded, and instead they left it all ledge and stone, which looks perfectly fine and it's stable. So, you know, to Amy's point, you know, we don't know for certain that we have everything there exactly as it should be, but it's done. Sadly, Mr. Walsh has passed away, so he's not here to answer some of those questions. So
Okay, I got my tissue.
I don't see a reason that we can't issue a certificate of compliance. Everything else there seems to be in order.
The only thing that I was concerned about, and which was major concern when we were going through the project, was that the back side of the property was stabilized.
Right.
You know, and if you think it's stabilized, there's plantings, everything's going there, I'm fine with it. That was the big issue when we were doing this.
Yeah, I just think, you know, if you would do us a favor, if someone's buying this piece of property, that they understand that it is in jurisdiction, and, you know, other times when people buy a piece of property, they want to make changes as well, and they need to know that they need to come back to the commission for those changes.
Anything out there?
So,
I can attest that the buyer knows this is in conservation's jurisdiction. I spoke personally with the buyer. I also forwarded them a copy of the O&M agreement, or O&M requirements on the catch basin, which is out there. So they are aware of them.
Okay. And then, Penny, we did look over the bank so we could see what went on the property to the east, where the existing house was placed. And everything there seems to all be planted and stabilized as well. So, I mean, I don't see what else they could really do to this project.
No, that was the major concern back when this came before us.
Yep.
Was how close it was and that it was stabilized.
Right.
And if it looks good, then I'm fine with it. It has been a while.
Yeah.
Since we were out there.
Yeah?
Years.
we're lucky that you were on that, because I don't have anyone I can ask.
No.
So it's great that you
Frank
were
and
part
I
of it.
were, yeah,
It's great you're part of it.
out there quite a bit.
Frank, also, after you had left, Greg, Amy, and I walked down, we're watching that pipe, and we're trying to figure out, okay, this is where we think it, like, you know, it is. And there's a retaining wall in the back door of the basement that is over 5 feet. And I looked at that wall, and I started to think that if, you know, if there's any kind of water, it's heavier than dirt, there should be compromise in that wall.
Right.
Because that wall's been there, and it's tall. It doesn't need repointing, there's not a stone out of place. So I think it does come down. I do know at one point there was talk about, did he have to blast, because I told you guys the driveway, and my dad was like, no, we go around the rock. To blast the rock is gonna cause more instability. So I do know from that, whatever Sunday conversation we had about the driveway, that keeping stability and not blasting and not dealing with ledge was part of it.
Don't you wish she was on Glades Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
A woman after my own heart.
Once this is closed, I'll talk about that. I couldn't believe that you'd get more impervious by adding dirt onto stone. I was with you on that. I got lost on that one.
Well.
But Doug got saved with like scientists to clean the stuff. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
See what you learn here?
It was fascinating, actually.
All right, then
I think we're okay here.
we don't actually vote on them.
Nope.
No.
You know, it's up.
All right, well, we
I think
have
feel
them ready to go,
comfortable.
so we'll,
That horse has, like, been pummeled.
yeah, all set. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's move on.
Good.
You're good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Amy, thank you for coming
14
out.
Kimberly Road.
14 Kimberly, okay, 14 Kimberly is another project that you guys probably remember. Actually, this one was permitted originally back in like 2004.
Yeah.
I think it was, and the owner held on to this lot for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
And actually, there was an engineer who originally permitted it. Gregory took it over and redesigned it a little bit, but there was rain garden, driveway,
Yeah, right in the front there.
setback. Yeah, some mitigation, and anyways, for the property sale, which actually this one has sold, but I think that they feel more comfortable, I don't know who feels more comfortable, but somebody is looking for a partial certificate, and the work is not done. So they're outstanding on this one is grading, stabilization of the lawn, because it's not planting season. There's a replication area that wasn't planted in the right soil horizon, so they need to tweak that a bit. And then there was also 150 feet of split rail fence that was gonna be put along the 50-foot. So all those need to go in. The driveway was paved, but so typically we would put a holdback on a partial if we're gonna issue a partial. So the number that we put out there during discussions with the seller and Jeff Hassett, I think was, Jen, was it like 15, 10?
10 or 15.
Yeah. 10.
15.
I think
The big thing was, I think, the rain garden in the front there. Frank. Or
Well, there
whatever,
was a
but-
wetlands replication
Yeah.
that's off of, we've gone out there a couple of times. We had some calls from neighbors. There was a
Yeah.
lot of standing
Well,
water.
I was out there in the fall.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean,
Yeah,
that
it
whole
is.
Roses Lane area
Yeah.
is all wet.
Right.
And I think what we want is to be sure that there's enough funds available
Definitely.
to
Get it done right.
get it done right.
Yeah.
And there's a number of outstanding issues.
Right.
So,
And they're not small, they're very important.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 15.
Yeah,
15, right.
Okay.
that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, can we go back to the orders of condition?
Yep.
I make a motion, we accept the orders of condition for 87 Glades Road as written. Second, please.
Second.
Please.
I thought I was supposed to ask
All
for
in
that.
favor?
Aye.
Here we go, what the hell?
Let's keep
I
it
make a
rolling.
motion, we accept the orders for 606 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. I actually didn't read those.
Second.
For the track
All
and
in
field?
all in favor?
Well, I didn't read them.
That's your problem.
I know.
Do
So
you want me
how
to-
did
you want me to-
did
I
you-
make a motion to
Is it
accept the...
okay?
Yes,
All right.
as written.
I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I make a motion, we accept the orders for 58 Dreamwell Road as written.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion, we accept the orders for 6 Pond View Drive as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Look at that. A well-oiled machine here.
We're getting bogged down a little bit there. We had to push it out of the
Because
mud.
people don't want to stay in order.
Is there a reason?
Oh,
Waiting for
let
us.
me see, we got new correspondence.
Extension of
Agent
Don, do you want to add anything so
Policies.
you don't have to sit here and watch all this?
that's all right.
Oh,
It's a hearing, isn't it?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes for January 28th and February 11th as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right, I'm done.
All right. Request for minor modifications. We also have 156 Summer Street to add a reverse osmosis treatment system and expand the leaching area. So this is a well, there was a site that we conditioned that has had to have a well because there's no town water. And they tested the water originally from the well, and it tested with a little bit of manganese. But then, in starting to draw water on a regular basis, they retested it, and it has manganese and another mineral, and I can't remember. But in order to...
It has coliform.
Oh.
And coliform?
Yeah.
Really? So in order
They
to
need to
treat
fix
that, they need to have a more advanced treatment system, which also has a greater discharge. So basically, that you're, for every water that you're using, you're having another gallon of water that you're emitting. So there's not enough area to dump that.
They're expanding.
And they can't just discharge that water directly onto the ground, it's gotta go back into the septic system. So they need to expand the leaching area.
Yep.
And it's the area that they want to expand the leach areas within the limit of work. So I honestly can't see what the alternative would be.
Right.
And I don't see why we can't do that. The orders are still open, that we can't do that as a,
Minor
as a
modification.
minor modification.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's my read on it.
So do we have to do a motion for that?
I would say we should.
Okay, I make a motion for a minor modification.
And you'll have a plan
On the
for, do you already have a plan for that, or you'll get, okay.
56 Summer Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, while you're making motions, why don't you make a motion for the dredge projects? I don't think you made a motion for that
I don't
either.
know if we did. I make them, yes, you know what we did.
Well, if a motion, I want to do a letter of support.
Okay,
to-
I make the motion that we send a letter of support to who?
To.
Or an
it's gonna-
informational letter?
It's going to be just a letter of acceptance of the minor modification.
For the time,
It's for the permit application and for the RFP.
for the scheduling and for the slight changes in dredging, so.
Get that, Jen?
Letter of support?
The letter of acceptance.
I think letter of acceptance.
Of their minor plan.
I think you want to be
changes.
careful to support of something you're
Right.
conditioning.
Yeah.
Right, it's not a letter, exactly.
Second.
Letter of acceptance.
All in favor?
Aye. We're in support of that.
Uh-huh.
Okey-dokey.
Extension of,
What is the condition?
Yeah.
19 Peggy Beach Road?
what is that?
So, that is the infamous Hoffler lot on the beach.
Do we want to, have we had a request to extend that?
Right, and I think it's not on its first rodeo here, folks. I
Right.
think it's-
No, it's not. Is the soil still contaminated and?
No, they completed the assessment, and I think mostly they did a risk assessment of the environmental contamination that was in the soil.
Did they remove all the soil we told them to?
Well, let Amy
No,
finish.
I think that they performed an analysis of what was there, and so under certain exposures, you can do something with the property, but I think they're limited to other activities. Like, I'm not so sure you can have a garden there, but yeah, you can probably roll around in it if you're a kid. You know what I mean? It's like there's,
What was on the site?
So it was an area that was filled with material from, it was a
A burn
fire in the
site,
harbor, and they tore down this building, and they took some of this material, which was brick and block and stuff, and they filled this area with that. So I don't think they found anything that's very dangerous. It's just,
Shouldn't have been
it
there.
wasn't permitted.
Right.
that way.
19 Peggy Beach Road.
It's not even on the
It's just
beach.
woods.
No, it's not on the beach.
It's woods.
It's
It's
right
on the
where the road
uphill
turns out to go to
side.
Google
Piggly.
it.
right before the,
I'll do
right at the entrance to
How do you spell
the
that?
parking lot.
It's across the street from the,
Parking lot.
It's across the street from the parking lot, that's right.
Before.
We had some interest in that lot
Yeah.
also.
Oh,
We've
across
had
the
people
street
come
from-
in.
But
So it's gonna, something's gonna happen.
who inherited it?
We don't need to know.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I didn't
So
get
what-
somebody filed.
What are they doing that they're extending the time frame for?
Just gives them a longer period of time to
Well,
comply.
because they have a permitted single-family house on the
Ah,
lot.
there we go. Okay.
But then
corner of the lawn.
at some point, it was.
Who's talking before
I
the
don't
B?
know, it's got a complicated history that way predates.
There was a lot of
me.
fill, lot of fill, lot of fill.
Right.
And then there was a drain question
Yes,
about the
that's right,
town and the
Lisa.
drain and the road.
Yeah. But they
don't know
can,
Yep.
on one little section
Yep.
of the house.
Right.
I make a motion that we
Is that the
How
one
much
that-
time?
Is that the one that's right next to a
Extend.
lot that
1 year?
says nature's lot?
Penny?
Yeah.
1 year.
1 year or 3?
1.
All right, I make a motion, we, oh, man.
Extend the order of conditions.
Extend the order of conditions for 19 Peggotty Beach Road for 1 year.
For a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 246 Gannett Road.
Yeah.
So this one was a pier going
Yes.
out
Oh, yeah.
to Musquashkett?
Mhm.
Does
No,
that sound right?
No, I think this
No,
one,
not Musquashket.
this one out into the Gulf.
To the marsh, yeah, I'm sorry, to the marsh, yeah,
yeah, 246.
right.
That's the one that Adam came in.
Yes.
Yeah.
1 or 3 years.
Well, I think for that one, you could probably,
Go
it's
for
more of a
3.
maintenance extension, so I would go for 3 years on that one. The other one, I just think the 1 year, it's been going on,
We'll
and
see
you
what
might want to
happens.
revisit
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Yep.
I make
Do
a
their
motion
housekeeping. This is
we
not a big
extend
project, yeah.
The orders of condition for 246 Gannett Road for 3 years.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, what else do we have?
What else?
Can I talk about conservation land signs real quick?
No.
About signs?
Just keep rolling.
Just keep going, Frank.
This is what we want for signage to post. This one doesn't have a couple of amendments, so sorry. I only have one.
Okay. I'm hurt.
Oh, I know that lot.
Are you looking at
Jen, you want to
PDB?
chime in a little bit on this?
Sure. So, these are some of the rules that we'd like to include with the trails information. Just high level in brief, obviously there's still like town regulations that are supported behind some of these, but just general guidelines, short and sweet. The people who have been helping build the trails, like Howard, has put a lot of effort behind this, so,
If anybody wants to read the backup, I've got them from several other towns.
I'm sure you do, yeah. But we would put them on the website, and then they would be on, like, the kiosks that will be built for each of those sites. And perhaps even on the pamphlets, if there's space on that other side, it could just be included there. But really, for the kiosk is the most important.
Right.
So we just need you to say,
Yay.
this is perfect.
Well, so is this the first time everyone's looking at this?
No.
Well, some of us have been working on it, but it is the first time for probably some folk. It's pretty straightforward. What we want to make sure with all of these is, as Jen pointed out, behind, this is just what goes up on the sign. So we need to be sure that there's, in the town bylaw or other rules and regulations, that all of these have backup, which they seem to have, but we need to make sure that that's adequate, so that if we find someone violating this, we can't just take them and say, well, they did
Yeah,
this. There's actually
right.
got to be a law
Backup,
that they
yeah,
broke.
underlying.
Can you smoke on these trails?
Smoke what?
Cigarettes?
What would you like to smoke?
I don't smoke. I was just
Right.
wondering, because listen to all these forest fires from people smoking out, it just
Yeah.
says no alcohol drugs. But I guess smoking
Does it
is.
say no campfires? Is that one of them?
We don't have it on here. It's in our rules that there are no campfires or they have to be permitted. We just, you know, it gets to a point where we're trying to hit on the primary pieces. We've talked about what are an issue on our property so far, and those are the ones that we've come up with. You know, if we don't put up enough signage, we can't ask the police or someone else for enforcement. On the other hand, how much information can we put out there? I mean, we're trying to have we have this debate about how pristine we want the woods to be.
Yeah.
And if we posted every rule, regulation, and whatever,
When everything's important, nothing's important.
I know. You're 100% right there, Paul.
Wow.
what a philosopher, huh?
Holy smokes.
That's what you do when you're an autopilot. You think about things like that.
All right. So what do we do to
He's
agree to this?
training on those 737,
Yeah, I hope
800
not.
series. For 56 minutes and then they crash.
All right,
All right,
well,
all right,
looks
all right.
good.
So are we good on the,
So while everybody's looking at this, the other piece is we're back to the use of the property for things other than just a trail. And we had a little bit of that the other night when it came to the ferry doors. And whether we want to get a presentation from the folks that want to do these pieces, or wants to do this as on the property. And I know, we started to go down that road the other night. Penny expressed her opinion,
Very
surprisingly. But I don't know. I mean, we have a number of people that want to use the properties for different things, and we have to decide how much we want to allow people to do, not do.
what are some of the examples of what people want to do? Which
So
might
we
be
had a
helpful?
request for, on the Ellis property, there was a group that came in and they wanted to paint rocks along the trail. It was some sort of healing trail.
Inspirational messages,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And we decided that, painting the rocks is fairly permanent. We didn't want that to take place.
The
We,
big thing was, we thought a lot of people would take offense to it, too. It wasn't just the painting, the permanent, because it came up about that. You have to be careful when you get into stuff like this.
Right.
And that's where it came about that.
and then we just had at the Driftway where people were putting up large wind chimes, building their own benches, cutting off limbs.
Yeah.
But decorating trees. So we're trying to decide what it is that we want to allow people to do and not do. And then, at the same time, we want to encourage use. I mean, one of the biggest issues we have with these properties is still dogs, and people's feeling about dogs. There's dog owners, there's non-dog owners, there's people that are threatened by them, there's other people that want to be able to walk their dog on these properties. And so we have some rules and regulations now where the dogs would be leashed, cleaning up after your dog, that sort of thing. There's some people that have enjoyed decorating those pine trees at Christmas time as a memorial or just because they like it. And we, as a commission, need to decide what we want to allow people to do and not do on these properties. We're the custodian of those properties. At the same time, being mindful that people want to enjoy this in a certain way. And I think I said it the other night, we don't want motorized use on the trails, but we're going to allow mountain bikes, I assume. I mean, that's been the consensus that we've had here. We will allow people to ride horses on some of them. If it becomes problematic, we can curtail some of that. And so we had this request to put up these ferry doors as an educational piece, bringing kids onto the property and encouraging them to get out in the woods. And the feeling from some of the members is that the woods are the woods and they should be left as pretty much intact as they could be, although we're out there putting up signs and we're flagging the trails and putting up markers and.
That's for safety.
Well, that's.
Well, my opinion would be, unless someone wants to have a hearing about one of the rules, you're wasting your time having a hearing about something that's against the rules. Like no cutting of trees. If I say I want to come in and make a proposal to cut all the trees down and have a hearing, well, that's all, or ride my motorcycle or leave things behind, well, that's already against the rules, unless you want to come and change the rules. You know what I'm saying? Have
I understand. So if we wanted to have tree work done within any of these forests, we would have a forester or some sort of plan, or would be doing emerging growth, and we would have a hearing and we'd have a discussion on that.
Right.
So the topic that's up for this evening is whether or not we want to allow these ferry door pieces, and I guess the thought that you have is, do we want to allow that person to come in, make a presentation to the commission, and let the commission decide whether or not we think that this is an appropriate use in our property?
I thought we already talked about this and we decided we would bring them in.
I don't know that we ever got to that.
No, we did.
I thought we did.
Yeah, well, I think last
Oh, I'm
meeting.
getting senile.
Yeah, no, it got going round and round, but you're right, it ended up
At some point, I was
We
dizzy
bring them
then.
in.
with,
on
Penny
a
was
slow
debating not
agenda.
having the doors, but, and I said at the end, what we're talking about is whether they should have a hearing, not whether
All
the
right,
doors.
so we're gonna let those people, contact those people and set them up to come to a meeting.
Well, we were gonna pick a agenda that's slow. I mean, it could be that April 1st is that.
Well, you guys decide that.
Right, well, we will, and because I.
But don't ask Penny.
I know, because I emailed. the
Without
lady.
Penny's input, decide on the appropriate meeting.
We've already discussed this, Frank.
I'm sure you have.
And because I
You're
emailed
way
her
out.
the day after the last meeting, and I said,
Thing
we'll
somewhere
let
in a
you
bottom
know
drawer.
when we can bring you in. And she was happy with that response.
Okay, good.
She said, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I guess
Smart woman.
I missed that one.
You missed it all.
I'm gonna get on the agenda to put little billboards out there advertising pubs and stuff.
What else do we have to discuss?
So we're gonna take these one case at a time.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
I think it's a bad idea.
No, I don't think, I mean, I think we should remain to be an
All or nothing.
open, I mean, we work for the town.
Are we supposed to be protecting nature or encouraging whatever? I mean, I just look at it.
You could
it's-
argue that you're also trying to make the best use of nature.
Okay, here we go again, same.
So we're not doing this tonight.
Right, we're having a hearing.
And just
Yes.
while we're here, so on the trails and whatnot, we're making great progress in the maps.
Yeah, there's some debate over the last 2 maps that are to be done, only because it is winter. But we're going to keep going forward with them because we have a contract that ends in the end of May or something like that. So it's a little squishy, but
It ends? Wow.
it's a year or something.
I mean, we might be able to eke out a little bit more time, but essentially, we want to try to get these maps pulled together.
Yeah.
No, I'm just surprised the edges.
Are they going to print? Like, are we gonna be delivered with a big couple of cases of maps?
No, not necessarily, because like the contract is specific to IVIS, as opposed to the printing, I think would be something that was a separate line item, not IVIS printing it.
So the intention is to have them printed?
The intention is to print them.
So that we'll hand them out in the, like, library and stuff like that, Council on Aging?
When they're ready, they could be printed.
Along with the map, the maps are two-sided, so we have, on the map side, there's the map and the trails and logos for certain things, but on the other side, there's also a write-up of these different properties. So we're still working on some of the write-ups with that sort of thing, on the ones that they've, like the Driftway Park, and some of the ones that are pretty much advanced. And then to Jen's, what Jen was saying is like the Damon and the Crosby one, we really have like sort of preliminary trails, but the folks that have been doing the trail work, we've now got a guy on board that knows how to Google things. And, yeah. And he's actually doing his own GPS stuff, which has been really helpful, because now we can look at these before we get them back from the, from IVIS, from our consultant, and we say, is that where we want the trail? So it's really been helpful in my mind.
He's a really strong asset. I mean, and Howard gets along with him great. He's just a really good team player.
Yep.
So it's nice to have him.
The group of folks that are helping is growing with really quality folks.
That's good.
Now, there's opportunity to get additional help through the Council on Aging, through the Senior Work-Off Program.
Yeah.
It would be great if you guys could put that on your agenda and discuss your need, and so, I mean, because I think we would love to be able to engage one or more seniors.
Sure. Well, we already got them.
For trail maintenance.
Yeah.
That's part of our our crew.
Well, so, I mean, if that's the case, I mean, maybe they need to contact Linda, and Linda can put them on the books or something. I don't know enough about the program, if there's an income eligibility or
Okay.
or not, or if it's just age.
Yeah.
But
It's just age.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we should, I'll
Yeah.
mention it, sure. And then, but the other part is that we don't want to get maps out there, either paper maps or online, in some of the locations until we have access points. Because otherwise, people are going to be like, well, how do I get to, the Driftway's not a problem. Hubble, there isn't a parking area. We can put that one out there. People can park along the road.
They have-
Ellis has parking, so we're good with that one. And maybe we can do some part of Bates Lane. We have parking at Mount Hope with access there. But we're just a little bit cautious about putting too much stuff out there, so that we
you can't get there yet.
can't get there.
Yeah.
So the good news is, as we've been wading through all the stuff with our access things, we've got some preliminary estimates back on the construction, and we're looking like we're within where we wanted to be with this, at least the preliminary estimates. We still may consider making one or two of the parking sites as an ad alternate, just so we're sure that we have enough money to build the real critical access, which is Crosby and Bates Lane. But it's looking much more promising. And then we got a request from an Eagle Scout that wants to build at least one of the boardwalks.
Oh, wonderful.
So we have to get going on that RDA.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
See,
So,
exactly why we have to hear people out.
Yeah, we need a plan.
Boy
We need
Scout
some
wants
kind
to
of a
come in and
sketch
do
of
something on
a
one of the
plan.
well, this is our plan
Yeah,
to
but
build
that
this
could happen
boardwalk.
on
Some kind of,
Yeah.
That's to get people on.
Well, it's okay to build boardwalks out there.
You know what? Go talk to the national parks people. I've been to too many parks, and that's what's driving me crazy. You have to have signage.
You
to
lobbed
say-
it over here, I'm lobbing it back.
Well, I just am
Anything else, Frank?
I don't know, I think we're pretty good.
Good. Motion to adjourn.
adjourned.
Second on that? All in favor?
All right.
Right.